Our next speaker, I want to switch it up just a little bit, is here from Austin and Lakeway, actually, Miss Jennifer Fleck, who's an attorney, an accomplished corporate attorney, a wife and mom, and she had a great battle in Cy-Fair just north of Houston. Similar to what Debbie spoke of in Round Rock ISD, Jennifer also fought in Cy-Fair ISD and had a great success, worked closely with then Senator Dan Patrick, now Lieutenant Governor, and so we want to thank her for coming here and sharing her expertise, and especially on the penal code. So please welcome with me, Ms. Jennifer Fleck.
Good afternoon. I'm going to change gears a little bit and talk about the penal code, which hasn't really been mentioned today. We've mostly been talking about the education code, which is civil law. My name is Jennifer Fleck. I'm here to address the repeal of the Texas Penal Code obscenity exemption and make a plea for the replacement that there be no defense to the display of obscenity as it relates to minors. As we know, as American citizens, we enjoy the First Amendment right to free speech with few exceptions, but one of those exceptions is the constitutional protection from obscenity. In Texas, there are criminal codes that specifically pertain to obscenity in children. I'll address Code Section 4324 on the screen, the sale, distribution, or display of harmful material to a minor. This section provides an unwarranted, state-sanctioned affirmative defense to prosecution. The defense is an open door that allows a destructive agenda that's presented as normal and appropriate. This door must be closed by the Texas legislature, and as provided by the Republican Party of Texas platform plank number 93, it's what the voters want. So let me explain the open door. As an attorney, I'm always mindful of the end goal, which is a favorable verdict. With that in mind, I focus and prepare on the charge or the instructions to the jury, which would include the following for this section. As it pertains to the sale, distribution, or display of harmful material to a minor, the state must have the requisite evidence to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant knowingly or was reasonably certain that the exhibit or display was harmful and knew the person was a minor and who would be present and be offended or alarmed. Beyond a reasonable doubt is the highest standard of proof that can be imposed on a party at trial. So again, in order to find a defendant guilty of obscenity to a minor, every juror must agree that the defendant knew for certain that the material was harmful and directed it to a child or children anyway. The jury instructions would then provide that if you all agree that the state proved beyond a reasonable doubt that knowing harm occurred, the defendant is guilty of obscenity to minors. That's where it should stop. But for the exemption or affirmative defense that's listed as C on the screen and is behind tab number 8 in your binder. The jury is instructed, even if you find the defendant guilty of obscenity to a child, it's excused for education. Remember, the defendant knew the material was harmful, knew the audience was children, and was certain it would cause harm. As you can see, other defenses include scientific, governmental, or other similar justification. The words other similar justifications not defined in the code. In this context, it's impossible to ascertain what the legislature meant. Therefore, it's impossible to ascertain what justification qualifies. Other similar justification is vague, and it lends itself to arbitrary enforcement and could include almost anything. Given a creative, talented lawyer, it could include almost anything. If the jury finds that it's more likely than not that there's justification for the harm, then the jury must return a not guilty verdict. The sad truth is that a successful defense doesn't mediate or lessen the harm. And the child and the family is no less harmed when the guilty are free from consequences and avoid accountability. I have to ask, should there be any justification for knowingly harming a child for any reason? Is there a situation in which an educator should be allowed to knowingly harm, alarm, and offend a child? Is there scientific excuses? Can you imagine a governmental reason, besides law enforcement, to excuse knowingly harming, alarming, and offending a child? It's bad law. It allows for unsafe environments, especially in the classroom. It's not protective of our most vulnerable and at risk. This defense reflects a conscious disregard for the health of children. This exemption further undermines parental rights and violates long recognized constitutional protections. This extra protection afforded to potentially grade school educators and the like violates the civil rights of all children, so exposed under the 14th Amendment, promising equal protection to all. My child, my 14-year-old, and every child in public school is entitled to the same protection from obscenity as a child that's outside the public school system. And yet this exemption leaves them unprotected, exposing children to legally harmful materials under the guise of education, science, art appreciation, bully prevention, tolerance training, denies Texas children constitutional protection. This is the open door that I was referring to that needs to be closed. It allows harm that would otherwise be illegal. The Supreme Court has held that the government can and should constitutionally protect children from exposure to obscenity, and has further argued that if the environment is owned by the government, i.e. schools, then the government has greater authority to control speech on its own property that is uniquely accessible to children. The law is clear. Texas legislators can and should protect children from exposure to material that is obscene, especially in environments owned by the government and uniquely accessible to children. We're asking, and I'm asking, for the Texas legislature to remove the affirmative defense to prosecution for obscenity to minors. Remove any excuses for knowing harm and replace them with, and I've typed it up, it is no defense to prosecution for persons having scientific, educational, governmental, or other similar justification. This proposed amendment would mandate an instruction to the jury that there is no justification for knowing harm, thereby prohibiting any introduction or discussion of evidence that might compromise deliberations and allow harm to children. In conclusion, I'm an advocate for the best interest of the child, specifically protecting children's health, and I'm an advocate for parental rights. The Education Code provides no civil enforcement for breaking the law, and this defense cripples criminal enforcement. Parents are stripped of their ability to protect their own children from an agenda that seeks to kill morality, steal innocence, and destroy family. It needs to change, and it needs to change now. Please sponsor and support bills that protect children's health in every environment. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Jennifer. And all I can say is ditto in the instance of time.